All right, we are live on YouTube, and let's begin. So, welcome. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for all coming along. Please keep yourselves on mute. We are recording this evening. If that's not okay, then I suppose please leave. But this is just so that we can share this as widely as possible. We are going to go for 1 hour this evening and no more. If we do find that there's more questions and we couldn't get to all the points and questions made, we will be answering them on our Twitter account. And of course, you can always email us. Thank you so much for all coming along. It's so great that we can reach out to you and speak to you and have this discussion and tell you about what's going on with the campaign in your homes. Amazing. So there's 3 others of the team are here with me, and they're gonna say a brief hello in a moment. Mike, Heidi, and Flora. But just to give you the format of this evening, it's going to be very straightforward. I'm going to give you a presentation, not too long. I want to give you an update on the campaign, explain to you what's going on, give you the basics of why we're doing what we're doing. I'm really going to focus this evening on action that we can take and we all need to take. And then we'll have plenty of time afterwards for questions and comments if you have any. So what you can do as well, as well as if you're on the call itself, you can ask a question. Mike's going to be sort of chairing. He's going to be taking the questions. But you can type questions and comments in the chat as well. If you're watching this on the live stream on YouTube, then we can take your questions there too. Just type them in to the chat feed, the YouTube chat feed on the live stream. And like I said, anything we don't get to, if there is anything, we will answer it on our Twitter, or you can email us. So I'll just pass over now to some of the team who we have here, who are just going to say a few words from themselves. So Mike, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. Great to see so many of you with us. I'm the communications manager at Power for People. So my job involves managing the website, social media, really just the marketing side of things. I've just seen that the YouTube chat box isn't working, unfortunately. So if you are watching on YouTube and you have a question, feel free to email us at info@powerforpeople.org.uk. I'll put that in the chat box, and then we'll try and answer your questions too. Heidi, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi. I'm a campaigner at Power for People. Also really great to see you all here tonight. So I mostly work to raise funds for our campaign activities. And I also liaise with supportive MPs, organisations and councils to build the strength of the campaign supportive coalition. So tonight I'm going to be monitoring the chat boxes. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all of your questions. Yeah, really looking forward to this evening.
Flora, do you want to say a few words?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Flora. I'm a campaigns volunteer for Power for People. I've been supporting the team, helping with social media and the database for the campaign. And tonight I'll be helping to manage all of your incoming questions. So yeah, thanks for coming.
Great, thanks very much. So it's a wonderful setup here. Basically, I just do all the talking, and then the rest of the team do all the work, and I get all the glory. It's a great position to be in. But seriously though, the team are fantastic, and I really would like to pay tribute and thank them. So thank you guys. With regards to those who are watching the live stream on YouTube, and with regards to if the chat feed isn't working, may I suggest, if you put any questions or comments you want us to deal with tonight, if you put them on our Instagram or on our Twitter, and Mike, you can monitor those now, can't you? And Heidi, you can have a look at those as well. And that way we can hopefully, if you've got any questions, we can get to them as well. But yeah, apologies for that slight technical bump. Right, so I have a presentation I'm going to run through now. And then we'll go on to questions. So I'm just going to share my screen. So here we go. So tonight, the subject of our meeting is achieving the community energy revolution. We're going to be talking about what the campaign is that we're running, but I really want to emphasize, focus on actions that you can take and how you can help. We will only win this campaign if all of you help and take action on an ongoing and persistent basis. So for those of you who don't know, I am the director and the founder of Power for People. I founded it 3 years ago, or 4 years ago now, 2017. My background is in parliamentary campaigns. I worked on a number of campaigns that successfully saw new laws passed by Parliament. A couple of examples are the Doorstep Recycling Act and the Climate Change Act, but I'm going to talk a little bit about those as well in a bit. So Power for People has two aims. We are a climate change campaigning organization, and our two aims are to accelerate the deployment of renewable energy generation across the UK. The situation that we have is that we are way off target in terms of meeting our emissions reduction pledge under the Climate Change Act. We need to rapidly transition to renewables. One of the big problems is that heating and electricity and heating and transport are still primarily fossil fuels based. And so that obviously needs to be switched to electric, and that electricity must come from renewables. So there is a huge challenge that we're facing, but we must rise to it. But secondly, and equally as importantly, we want to see the transition, all these new renewable energy infrastructure plant that's going to get built. We want them to see them benefit local communities. They must benefit. It's crucial because that will mean they are welcomed, and that makes them politically feasible. So there are two aims. You've met a few of the campaign team, but that's the whole team there. So there's actually 7 of us at the moment. And as I said, they're all great. And a couple of real veterans there, Ron Bailey and Martin Williams, who have been running campaigns like this for many, many years and who have achieved over 20 successful legislative changes in their careers. So David Attenborough said it recently again. Many others have said it. You've seen Greta Thunberg. You know about the climate crisis. I'm not going to lecture you on it, but we all must act to stop it. And I put it to you that the most effective thing you can do with regards to helping stop the climate crisis is to help campaigns like this one. Campaigns that ask for the government to take specific, meaningful actions are the most important and effective thing that we can work on. And so I cannot emphasize this enough. Your help is vital, and it is the single most powerful and important thing you can do. So our campaign is the Community Energy Revolution. That's what we call it. Specifically, we're trying to get a bill through Parliament, the Local Electricity Bill. We want to see the enormous potential for community renewable generation in the UK realized. But let's talk about the problem first. So what we have is these two figures, I think, very illustrate it very well. There's this enormous potential. So 3,000 megawatts is, according to a 2014 government report, what we could have had in community renewable energy generation by last year. The report said that if the right policies and interventions were made, that's what we could have had over the 6-year period, and we could have had that last year, but we don't. We have 280 megawatts, so less than a tenth of that, and that's only accounting for 0.5% of the entire electricity generating capacity of the UK. So I think that just illustrates so clearly the scale of the potential and indeed the blockage. And then the reason this has happened, and the reason this is happening, is ultimately because community energy schemes that exist or that could exist are unable to sell the energy that they generate or could generate directly to local people. And it's not that they can't legally, they can. It's insurmountable costs that are brought about by antiquated market rules. So the market structure we have for energy at the moment came about in the early 1990s when the whole system was privatized. Now, it made sense back then, the way they designed it broadly. And it was because there were very large power stations, and they were generating electricity, and they sent it out across the grid. And the rules were designed on that basis. But of course, the situation has changed dramatically. The rules do not fit. They are not fit for purpose anymore. We have an enormous amount of potential smaller scale generation, and indeed community energy schemes are the perfect examples of that. Small fields with solar panels on roofs, wind turbines, hydro units in rivers, for example. And it is really at the nub of it all is these insurmountable costs. The rules are making the costs of community schemes selling their energy to local people like you and me, they make those costs totally impossible. So analogy I give MPs that you might have heard me say already, is a microbrewery. Imagine I'm setting up a microbrewery, and so I want to deliver the beer that I'm going to brew to local cafes and restaurants and pubs, assuming it's after the pandemic. Now I need a delivery van to deliver those, and I look at the whole. I look at the plan, and I realize I can make it work. I'll need to get some money together to get the business off the ground, but it's viable. I could crowdfund or get a loan or something, and it's going to work. Imagine if then I am told that I need to spend £1 million a year for my single delivery van because it's using the road network. That is the situation that community renewable energy is facing. It's obviously impossible, and it's obviously only going to work at a national scale, which means then we have the blockage that I alluded to. So to illustrate a little bit more what we're talking about here, I want to tell you just a few stories of some of the existing community energy groups. So this is West Mills Solar Cooperative in Wiltshire. And there you can see they've got quite an impressive array of solar panels in the field behind them, a few wind turbines as well. Here is Donside Hydro in Aberdeen. So that's an Archimedes screw. It's obviously a hydroelectricity device behind them in the river. This is actually in urban Aberdeen, although you can't really see the urban area, but it is actually very close to neighborhoods. And so, they are so perfectly placed to sell the electricity that Archimedes screw right there is generating to local people, but they can't. It has to go onto the grid. They obviously have an agreement with a big license supplier, and they get a very poor payment for that in comparison to what they could get. We did a case study with this group actually, and they were categorical. They said if your bill became law, we could then sell to local people, which is what we've always wanted to do, and then we'd be able to at least double the generation we've got. We basically want to build at least one more of those big devices behind them. This is Banner House Solar in East London, and again a smaller solar array there on a council estate. A wonderful project, community project. So you might be thinking, well, all right, well, these community projects are all happening. They exist. That's brilliant. What's the problem? There are about 500 of these groups across the UK. But the problem is, as I showed you with that first statistic, they represent only 0.5% of our generating capacity, and they could be at least 10 times that. In fact, we estimate that they could be far more like 20 times that over a 10-year period if we got the bill through. So that's the problem. And a lot of these groups these three groups that I've just mentioned, they can't get off the ground anymore. These groups exist because of a more favorable policy situation that existed a few years ago. You might have heard of the feed-in tariff, which is a subsidy paid. That ceased as well. So, we must reform the market in order to allow these groups to flourish. And also one other thing to mention is these groups do wonderful work in the community. We call them community heroes, and we talk about them on our social media feeds. We've had fantastic examples, things like groups contributing to local food banks, people helping local people in fuel, groups helping people in fuel poverty, helping make local homes more energy efficient. They do a lot in the community, and obviously we just want them to be flourishing. So the solution is we need to enable local renewable generators, like those groups, to sell directly to local customers, as I say. So, or flip it round, we need a situation where you and I, if we want, can buy our electricity from a local provider, a local cooperative, a community energy company. And that requires a change in the rules. Like I said, it is the rules that are the problem. So often, it is ultimately the rules that are the problem. And if you change the rules, you can solve the problem. And so that's why we're going to Parliament. That's why we're asking for a bill. Only Parliament has the power here. We need a new process to be set up. It would ultimately be a new set of regulatory changes, but it has to come from legislation, from government, and that's why we're going to Parliament and we want to change the law. So here's the bill. Here's the bill itself, not very long, but in there it contains the core, which is to establish what's called a right to local supply. And so that would then give the energy market regulator, Ofgem, as they're called, the duty to establish a level playing field and make costs that new local energy companies face proportionate. And that would then make them financially viable. And that would then see a realization of the huge potential of community renewable generation. You can see all the MPs, in fact, that's not all. This is a slightly older version of the bill. So you can see a lot of MPs listed there, but we have a lot more on board since then, which I'll talk about in a moment. So what exactly would it mean if we got a Local Electricity Act through Parliament? Well, as I say, you and I, we're all going to be able to buy from a local supplier. That's the key change we'd all see. And so that then makes new community energy schemes viable because they can have actual customers locally. At the moment, they've got contracts with big suppliers, the utilities that we are customers of. And at the moment, they are getting about 5 pence per kilowatt hour for what they're generating. But as you know, you and I we're paying about 15 pence per kilowatt hour. So, somewhere in between that is where they would then sit. And that would obviously make these new projects viable, or indeed expansion of their existing projects. But then it would be the knock-on benefits as well, like I've already mentioned. There's a lot of great work already done by these existing local groups in the community. We want these groups to expand, have more of those activities happening. But think of things like the local skilled jobs that it would then create. Basically, think about the fact that right now we're all paying for electricity, and we pay a national or a multinational company in some cases, some of the largest utilities. And so that money that we pay for our electricity, it's going immediately out of the local economy. Imagine if a lot more of it was in the local economy, circulating, benefiting, creating those local jobs. And what better time to do it than when we're obviously desperately in need of an economic recovery after the pandemic. So imagine that the Act is law. Imagine we've won. What's the world actually going to look like? Are you now going to have multiple utilities for your energy, or are you just going to have one? Well, the bill is not specific on that. And it may be that you would just have, if you chose the local new energy company, and then when their generation was not actually, when their turbine wasn't turning or the solar didn't have sun on it, then it would be sourced off the grid. But you would need to worry about that. It would be looked after by the new local company that you'd become a customer of. Alternatively, and this is quite possible very soon with smart technology and things like smart meters and so on, you could have multiple suppliers. You could have it that you were automatically switching to the local supplier when they were generating, but as soon as they weren't, you were switching back to your existing supplier and it was coming off the grid from further away. And there's absolutely no reason that it can't be that way. Would prices go down? A lot of people ask this. We certainly won't go up. There are price caps and they're there for a reason. And the bill does not seek to change those. But prices certainly could go down because the system at the moment is not very efficient. Through the simple fact that when you generate energy and then send it a long distance across the grid, it loses some of its, you lose some of the electricity down the wires. Some of it's lost as heat. You might remember your GCSE geography or O-level geography, not geography, physics, learning that. But so, when you get more efficiency, when you get less loss down the wires, obviously that can ultimately result in efficiency gains that then ultimately can result in lower prices. And we think that there will be many cases where prices could be lower. Of course, ultimately, it would remain to be seen when we actually saw the new companies and cooperatives set up. And what about vulnerable customers? This is a very common question we get. You know, there are existing mechanisms in place that require vulnerable customers to be looked after. Things like, you know, no one must be cut off, or if an energy utility collapses at the moment, there are rules in place that obviously none of their customers get cut off. They actually just get transferred to a new one until they can then decide where they want to go. And the bill does not change any of those existing safety mechanisms and rules. They are important, they're there for a reason, and obviously we wouldn't want to change those, and it's not needed to change those. And interestingly as well, this has all happened before in a certain way, because pre-nationalisation of the energy system, we had municipal energy companies, and this was pre-1940s when it happened, when the nationalisation happened, and they make significant revenues. It was gas back then. Obviously, we'd want renewable electricity, but nevertheless, quite substantial local services and facilities were paid for from the revenues of the municipal energy companies. Things like public parks, bath houses, libraries, Strangeways Prison in Manchester, quite an impressive piece of architecture. I know it's a prison, but you know, it is an important facility that was built out of the revenues of the Manchester Municipal Energy Company. So in a sense, this has all happened before, and it could happen again. We have looked very clearly at the effects of what we'd see if we actually do win this. And our estimate is that over a 10-year period, we would see community renewable energy generation growing to 6,000 megawatts. So that would be a 20-fold increase. And that's based on that government report I mentioned earlier. And then as well, just to put that into saving, we're estimating about 1.5 million tons of carbon dioxide or equivalent emissions saved annually. So, you know, a really, really substantial climate benefit there. That second figure is sourced from WPI Economics, who have crunched the numbers quite well. Now, just to give you a sense of that saving, 1.5 million tons, that's about the emissions of the entire set of domestic flights that happen in the UK each year. Again, out of pandemic time. So, you know, we are talking very substantial impact here, plus all those knock-on benefits as well that I mentioned. So let's talk about the campaign. So we need support. We need support from communities, civic society, the great and the good. And here's a list of numbers just showing you the support that we've already built. So 65 national organizations, and they are from a very broad range. There's the typical environmental organizations you'd expect, like Greenpeace and WWF, Friends of the Earth, but there's things like the organizations like the Renewable Energy Association, the British Hydropower Association and the Solar Trade Association. Interestingly as well, Good Energy, one of the utilities, have supported the bill. And we've had some very interesting support from incumbents, such as there's two of the regional grid monopolies. So there's 6 regional grid monopolies that run the sort of regional wires around the UK on the grid. And 2 of them already have supported the bill as well, which is really quite remarkable. 69 county and local authorities, that's great, but we need a lot more. Something that you can help with. 321 parish, town and community councils, that's fantastic, and more of them joining all the time, and 447 community energy groups, so the groups I mentioned, and other local organizations as well. And again, the more the better. And the result of it all is currently there are 239 MPs backing the bill, publicly support the bill. This is what we need first and foremost. We need that number to go up. Technically, we need at least half, which would be 326. But I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. So there's the breakdown as well below. So that's a really impressive, good, strong, solid, broad cross-party breakdown. Even as you can see some MPs from Northern Ireland there, and that's despite the fact that the bill doesn't actually apply to Northern Ireland, but some of those Northern Ireland MPs, they feel that it would create an excellent model that Northern Ireland could then adopt. And so if any of you are from Northern Ireland, then you can still ask your MP to back it. So how do we win? Well, technically, with a majority of half the House of Commons plus 1, which would be 326 MPs, we would win. Technically, because we could potentially win any vote, but of course that's not really how it happens. You know, when there are votes in Parliament, not necessarily every MP turns up, and so on. And from experience, and as I said, I've worked on a number of these campaigns. We need around 400 MPs to win, and ultimately that's because we need the support of the government to win. The government does control pretty much comprehensively the timetable in Parliament, and without their support, they could and probably would obfuscate this. And so we need government support. So that's how we win. We estimate that with the growth has been good. It's encouraging, it's strong, and so we estimate that within the next 12 to 18 months, maybe even within the next 12 months, we could succeed with this. But I emphasize again, only with your help and with the help of all the support that we have. It is only through relentless and persistent action that a campaign like this succeeds. Can it be done? Of course, we believe it can be done. And past experience shows that it can be done. This is in line with the kind of policy the government talks about. The government produced an energy white paper laying out a bit more of the detail of their policy on energy. They produced it a few weeks ago. There's a lot of very warm words there that really do line up with exactly what we are calling for here. The wind is in our sails, the door is open, but we just have to push hard. It's a big, heavy door, and we still got to push hard to get it open, but we can definitely win here. And to talk just briefly about some of the past experiences and to show that, you know, these things really are possible. So this was the first campaign I worked on, which was it was actually called the Household Municipal Waste Recycling Act. But basically, it was the act that was passed by Parliament in 2003 that set up the weekly doorstep collection. So every week when you put your recycling out at the doorstep, that's because of a big grassroots campaign across the country. It was actually run by Friends of the Earth, but there were lots of other organizations, a big coalition. That's Joan Ruddock at the center, in the front there, holding the bottle. She was the backbench Labour MP who took it through as a private member's bill. Next to her is Tony Juniper with the jacket, and he was the chief executive of Friends of the Earth at the time. But this was a brilliant example of huge numbers of people lobbying their MPs to back a specific change. We've had a massive increase in domestic recycling. It was less than 10% domestic recycling rate before this campaign was won. It increased, I think, well, probably about 7-fold increase since then. So, you know, really effective. It's like I said before, the most important thing you can do, the most effective thing you can do is help a campaign like this. Even more powerful example is the Climate Change Act, which I worked on and became law in 2008. This is Hornsey 1 off the coast of Yorkshire, one of the largest offshore wind farms in the world. The UK now has the largest offshore wind farms in the world. Almost all of our coal power stations have been closed since 2008, and that and many other excellent things that we've done have been a direct result of the Climate Change Act, because it placed a legal duty on the government to continually reduce emissions. And they have been doing it. It has been happening over the last 10 years or so, but as I said earlier, they are now off track in order to meet future budgets, and that's why we're running this campaign. But, you know, the point I make is, you know, incredible beneficial effect due to a massive grassroots effort, people lobbying their MPs across the country. So this is the most important thing I'm going to talk about this evening, and this is the action that we would like you to please take. We need, I cannot emphasize, we need you to take these actions. So there's 5, I've got 5 here I'm going to go through. So number 1, join. If you have not signed up, please sign up. There's the link. This is very important. We can then tell you, we can give you updates. We can tell you, we can help you how to write. We can tell you when to write at pertinent times. If there's an emergency in Parliament, if they're suddenly going to discuss the bill, which has happened to us a couple of times, we can tell you, we can get you to lobby your MP to be there. There will be more and more moments like that as the campaign gets to its end stage. We're not there yet, but you need to join so we can do this. We can tell you about webinars this evening. Number 2, write. So we need you to write to your MP, and that doesn't mean once, although I know that looks like it says once. So we need you to be persistent. And if your MP is one that you think doesn't help very much or always writes you a rubbish reply, that is actually all the more reason to write. They're the MPs we need to get hassled the hardest, not be left alone. there are lots of clever ways to get your MP to take notice, and we can help you. So if you write and you don't get a response, tell us. Or if you get a response that's a fob off, send it to us. We help people tailor their responses back to their MPs. If your MP supports it, there's lots more that we need your MP to do. We need your MP to promote it, and we can help you ask your MP the right thing. We are very good, and I would say we are actually second to none in the UK at enabling and helping people advocate effectively with their MPs. It's nuances like your MP might be a parliamentary private secretary, which is a particular role they take within a party. And they might say, oh, I can't support the bill on that basis. That's not actually true. And we can give you examples of other parliamentary private secretary MPs who do. And we can help you in that way. Your MP might be on the shadow front bench, and they might say, I can't sign, and that's not technically true, but there's other things that you can ask them to do if they say that. Your MP might be a minister, and they might say, I can't sign it because I'm a minister. Again, there's other things that they can do, and depending on their role and what they say, we can help you to say the most effective thing back. So that's why you need to sign up and then write and then share with us any response you get back. Any response, I emphasize. The third thing you can do is recruit. And this is probably as important as the other two, because it's not just what is said to MPs, but it's the quantity. Imagine you're an MP. If you're getting lots of constituents contact you about something, you are far more likely to take it seriously. So please recruit others, get others to sign up. Please send the sign up link around. 4, meet with your MP. This is really effective, possibly especially with some more recalcitrant MPs, possibly the most effective thing that can then be done. We're organizing virtual visits because of the pandemic, and these have been really effective. We had a great one with Salisbury's MP, John Glenn, who's a junior minister at the Treasury, just before Christmas. It was a big call, about 50 people. I chaired it, which I'm happy to do if that will help. And John was he was really knocked over. He couldn't believe there was 50 people on the call, and it turned him from sort of being really quite uninterested to quite impassioned. And he's been lobbying the energy minister since then. So they can be very effective. We'll help you. We can connect you with others. We'll send you briefings. But it can be so good to meet with your MP. So please do that. And fifthly, promote it. So go beyond just you, people you know, and the MP. You need to trumpet it as well. We're good at doing that, but if we all were writing to our local paper, if we all were promoting it to whichever organizations that we know, then obviously it will just, the multiplier effect would just be so much greater. So yes, do write to your local paper, please. If you know any local groups, if you know the local parish or town council, please ask them to back it as well. So our strapline is together we can change things, and on this it's together we can win, but it is together. So what I would like to do now is take any questions you have, or indeed if you want to make a comment, please try and keep them brief. And I'm going to be relying on Mike here to be chairing and feeding. So Mike.
Thanks, Steve. That's great. Just quickly, if you are watching on YouTube, we have managed to get the chat box working. So please feel free to post your questions in there, and you might need to refresh your page, but we'll be monitoring that now. So first question comes from Nicola from Suffolk, sent in via email. She would like to know whether community energy projects alongside energy saving devices such as solar could ever be a serious alternative to large-scale national infrastructure projects such as Sizewell C.
Well, the answer, Nicola, is they certainly will. It will certainly help. If we were able to see that estimate of 6,000 megawatts, which that's going to be about 10% of current UK generating capacity, that could reasonably mean that we don't need it's one less new nuclear power station that we would need. So yes, it is possible. And again, that's not an upper limit, that 6,000. There's possibly the potential for even more. So yes.
Great, thanks. Next, we have Hilary Bowman, who says, who, apart from big energy suppliers, are against the local electricity bill, and why is that?
Oh, thanks, Hilary, and nice to hear from you as well. So just to be clear, we have not had any of the big utility companies publicly or privately say they don't support it or they oppose it. I have had some constructive, and I emphasize constructive, discussions with E.ON, which has been interesting and a little bit surprising. There has been no other organization that has publicly opposed it or said it's a bad idea or criticized it. It may, I think the possibility that the National Grid are perhaps a bit recalcitrant. I think there's a possibility of that. And it's also possible that some of the regional monopolies of the grid might be less favorable because they are the incumbents and they do stand to have to upgrade some of the network because of the fact that, in certain areas it's going to need it. But I think, and from what we have seen so far, remember, two of the regional monopolies of the grid, they back it publicly and they've written to MPs in their regions. I think they see that this is the direction of travel. And of course, they see that this is essential. We need this for climate change. They also see this is going to be so popular because of all those community benefits, and they don't want to be seen to be in the way. So I don't really think that's the real challenge we face here. The real challenge we face, I think, is pushing it high and up off MPs' agendas and up the government's agenda.
Great, thanks, Steve. Next, we have Anthony Claydon, who says, I visited a community energy website that recommends that financing of new projects is too difficult at present due to the lack of government support for new projects. Is that correct?
It's spot on, exactly so. And effectively what we are going to create if we succeed with this campaign is a viable way to make those new projects actually exist, to get them off the ground. Because if they are selling to local customers, that's a regular income stream, and they can make the financials work to then borrow the money or crowdsource to get the funding to actually build the new scheme.
Great. We have another question from Kamer. Apologies if I got your name wrong there. Many councils have declared a climate emergency with decarbonisation targets for 2030. However, it is a major struggle without significant change in the government's policies and funding. What one thing can councils do now until the government gets on board with the 2030 agenda for real?
Well, one of the best things they can do is formally support and resolve to support this campaign. So formally support the local electricity bill. And as I mentioned, we've got 65 who have done that already, but there's over 300 county and local authorities. So we need a lot more. It would be great if we had more. And that's what we'd want them to do. If they have already supported it, they can still help. They should be encouraging MPs, their local MPs, to either support the bill, or if they support it, to be pushing the government to back it.
Great, thanks, Steve. Next up, we have Nick Morfitt. The figures suggested that community electricity generation only has the potential to account for a reasonably small proportion of the UK's total electricity generation. Is that indeed the case? And does it undermine the value of the local electricity bill?
So just what was the start of that again, Mike? Sorry.
The figures suggested that community electricity generation only has the potential to account for a reasonably small proportion of the UK's total electricity generation. Is that the case?
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's one way to look at it, but I think to take it from 0.5% to 10% would be amazing. The knock-on benefits would be a multiplier far beyond that as well. But that's not, and I did say, but I'll just to reiterate, that's not an upper limit. It could go a lot more beyond that. Now, it's hard to know exactly, that would probably be over, a more than 10-year period after the Act became law. It's obviously hard to know exactly how big the take-up might be. But if you change the rules, you create the potential for whatever limit there could be to happen. And that's why we're changing the rules. And also to explain, there's no scaling requirement. So if you have these proportionate costs, you could also have regional energy companies. You could have conglomerates of community energy schemes. You could have regional cooperatives. You could have county-wide cooperatives. It would all be possible if we make this change to the rules.
Nice one, thanks, Steve. So we've had quite a lot of people email in. They're saying that they've hit a wall with their MP, that their MP isn't budging, and has basically categorically said they won't support the bill. So what would you suggest the best course of action is? And can these people do anything to convince their MP?
The first thing that I would say is not budging does not mean won't ever budge. And I speak from experience. You would be really surprised at some of the things I've seen in the past where an MP who said absolutely no or nothing for potentially sometimes years on a campaign eventually turns around and says yes. Now, sometimes it's a big public meeting or indeed for online meeting it would be in this case, but sometimes it's just receiving just a lot of letters or emails. But sometimes it is the persistence of one or a small number of individuals. So I'll take you back to the actions that I said earlier, which is if you get others to sign up and get them to write too, if you be persistent and if you seek to meet with them as well, but don't give up. That is the most important thing. Do not give up. You've got to be persistent. Right now, the government's position on this bill is, oh, look, we're kind of doing it already. Look, it's fine. There are some things in place, and now of course it's a complete fob off. But we're not going away. We're going to persist until we win. So you need to do that too, in your constituency with your MP. We'll help you. Tell us what your MP says back, and we'll help you with the best thing to say.
And is that the case for people who are emailing their MP and just not receiving a reply at all? Is it persistence, or is there anything else that people can do?
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, of course, if you're contacting your MP and they're not replying at all, and you're sending multiple messages, I mean, that is totally unacceptable. I think there's something I should emphasize here. There's a lot of deference to MPs. They are our democratic servants. They are accountable to us, not us to them. They should, at the very least, be engaging with you if you write to them. Of course, always be polite, of course. But it is unacceptable if they do not engage back. So please tell us if they don't, and we'll help you with your specific situation. We could connect you with others potentially, but not giving up is the key. So yeah, do tell us.
Great, thanks, Steve. Next up, we have Malcolm Kenwood, who asks, should we write to MPs both as individuals and as groups, e.g. local community energy groups?
Yes, definitely. And if it's possible that, it's a different name, I think that kind of helps, because it just, it's about more the MP sort of getting a sense of there's more people. So, if you're the chair, but there's a secretary or something, that I think that would help. So yeah, do it that way.
Great. So yeah, another one that crops up quite often in emails that people send in. Essentially, a lot of MPs are saying that they won't support the bill at the moment because it would distort the energy supply market. So how can people counter this in their follow-up email?
I mean, that's not correct. Of course, it's going to change the rules that it's governed by. So it's a question of semantics. I mean, it's a distortion that we want. We want costs to become proportionate. They're not at the moment. But that's a good change. If you, I mean, there is this sounds like what is actually a standard reply from some conservative MPs are sending this out as a standard reply. I emphasize some, but it sort of relates to the government line at the moment, which is probably a policy person somewhere in Whitehall who's just typed it out because they've been told they have to say no in some way, and they haven't necessarily given it that much thought. But we've seen some other, poor excuses for a no. But again, please share it with us, and we'll give you tailored points that you can make back. But quite simply, there is no government solution currently in policy or planned that would solve the fundamental problem that we're looking at here, which is that the costs of selling electricity directly to local people are not proportionate. That's the fundamental problem. And none of the things that they talk about as future policy ideas or existing mechanisms are going to solve that. So obviously, if something's going to create a distortion, a bad distortion, we wouldn't want that. But unless they can come up with a solution other than ours to that, then they should be supporting our solution. And indeed, if there's nearly as well over a third of MPs who are supporting it, so I mean, there's not really any reason not to support it. So yeah, but I think I made myself clear. Mike, is there anyone actually on the meeting here who we can ask a question from?
We see any hands up?
Can't see any hands up. That's okay.
Joanna, would you like to ask a question? Joanna, I think you might need to unmute yourself. You're still muted, Joanna.
That's better.
Right.
I'm in Edinburgh. You're talking about MPs. Yes, of course, we've got MPs, but we've got MSPs as well. Are you involving our Scottish parliamentarians as well?
Thanks, Joanna. That's a great question. So the bill obviously is going through Westminster. The reason for that is it's like I said, it's going to give a duty to the regulator, and at the moment, Ofgem, the regulator, they govern all of Britain, so Wales and Scotland included. That's why we've taken that approach. Obviously, Scottish MPs can help, and we need them to support it, and a lot of them already have, so that's great. But it will really help our campaign if the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government supported the bill as well, and there's no reason they can't. So if you would like to, and indeed anyone else and this applies as well to Wales, as I say, so anyone here from Wales, if you ask your MSPs or your Welsh Assembly members to support the bill, then that will help too, because ultimately that's going to put more pressure onto the Westminster government.
Can I ask a question, please? If local people are generating electricity, do we have to generate another network of cables so that it's shared amongst that local community, or can it be done through the grid?
Thanks, David. Yeah, good question. So this is going to be across the grid. This is not seeking to create new networks of cables. That would be extremely expensive and unnecessary. So yeah, it would be, the local wires are already there. There might be some places where they need upgrades in terms of technology or just hard infrastructure, but it's across the existing grid.
Could I come in at that point? It's extremely difficult to explain to people the difference between where your actual electricity comes from and where you pay your money. So all the electricity is amalgamated. Imagine it as a big bath of water. So the renewables are putting in from one tap, and so are the other people, and you're taking water out somewhere else. It's where your money goes that's the key thing. And I would suggest to the campaign, this needs very careful illustration with a clear booklet, clear diagrams, how it works, because it's not easy for people to understand. It's the difference between where your money goes and where the electricity comes from.
It's a good point, John. Thanks. Yeah, and we if you we've done our best with our guides and various materials on our website to make it clear. But to add a little more, the situation we've got is, as you say, so we've got what physically happens, and then we've got a market structure that kind of sits over the top of it, and they are not perfectly aligned. So to be really practical, when you turn on your kettle to make a cup of tea, if you can see a wind turbine nearby out of your kitchen window and it's turning because it's windy, there's no way that we can ever physically attribute that the electricity from that turbine generated is actually powering your kettle. It would not be helpful to try and apportion that and make you pay for that exact electricity. We have this grid that shares it essentially, and the nature of electricity just makes it such. So we have a market structure that kind of sits over the top of that, what's physically happening, and seeks to do it best. But what's important here is that it is better to have that local renewable generation. It is more efficient. We obviously want more of it because we need more renewable generation, not just for, obviously for the emissions benefits and for the community benefits. And at the moment, the market structure that was created in the 1990s, it doesn't even closely represent that. And it's not allowing community energy and local energy companies to exist. And that's what we're trying to create. And that's what the bill would create, a situation where you can actually buy from a local supplier.
We have a particular problem in that regard. I live in the Outer Hebrides. We're incredibly energy rich. We've had storm force winds for the last week and a half. I've got big waves crashing nearby. We have wind turbines. However, a lot of our electricity, and up till recently, most of it was renewable. But a lot of it came via an interconnector, i.e. a big cable under the sea that was damaged. So despite us having lots of wind generators and so on, some of them have been sitting doing nothing while the local power station has been burning oil. That's thanks to EDF and SSE not getting the house in order and charging us lots of money. We have a fantastic community energy scheme. Point and Sandwick Development Trust. Point is an area on the Isle of Lewis. And they did wonderful things, fantastic community benefits. Now their hands are tied. And it's so wrong. So power to your elbows, guys, to get it done. But it's so immoral that, me watching this is... I'm using oil to watch you, and it's wrong. It's so wrong. The other thing, that was part one, rather than me coming back. Part two, what are your views on micro generation? Because I believe every roof should have photovoltaic. There should be lots of air and ground source heat pumps everywhere. Remember, when energy is generated elsewhere, there's a voltage drop as it travels. Why does it need to travel if we can generate it locally? Oh, I know why. It's because the big boys can't make enough. Lots of lovely lolly and bonuses and profit, but that's such a bad model. Anyway, rant over.
Thanks, Janet. Well, thank you for the encouraging words, and interesting to hear of your current situation. I mean, I wouldn't. We're not attacking the big companies here. They are profit-making companies. They're working within the rules, and they're trying to make as much money as possible, and they're allowed to try and do that. They're not breaking any laws, and if they do, obviously they should be taken to court for that. But we're trying to change the rule structure. That's often the best way to solve a problem. In terms of, you asked about microgeneration, so it wouldn't be a situation where, if you had solar panels on your house, you would then be setting yourself up as a local energy company and selling to your neighbor and billing them. That's a scale too small, really, than we're talking with this. However, it would be quite possible to have, say, a local cooperative or a local community energy company pooling the generation that was happening from things like local schools or solar on church roofs, that kind of thing. So there may be ways that very micro scale of generation could actually then benefit directly from what we're trying to change here.
Could we just briefly talk about timescale? Forgive me if I missed you talking about it, but what sort of timescale are we looking at in terms of the bill?
So I think, again, this is an estimate, but possibly within the next 12 to 18 months, possibly within the next 12 months, given the rate of growth that we've had in support. But it gets harder and harder because obviously the keenest MPs, they sign up first, and so I emphasize it's an estimate, and obviously only if you all keep helping, please.
May I get a question in? I've got a sister with 12 panels on her roof.
David, may I ask, if just because you already had a question, could we perhaps we'll come back to you, but I think there are others, so if that's all right.
Understood. Yep.
Yeah, and we are coming up to 8 o'clock now, so I think maybe we should start rounding things up. There's actually a couple of questions that a few people have alluded to tonight, so I thought I'd pose them to you, Steve. The first one is, what can people ask their MP to do if they already support the bill? So I know we often tell people to ask their MP to write to the Energy Minister, but is there anything else they can ask?
Yeah, the number one thing at the moment is to write to the Energy Minister and ask the government to support the bill. But then there will be other things that we are going to be asking supportive MPs to do, but they'll occur at sort of poignant moments in terms of what's happening in Parliament. So that's why you need to sign up, so we can let you know.
Great. And then the second question that a few people have written is, I've asked my MP to support the bill, but they told me they can't vote in their position as a minister. So how do people go about replying to that?
So ministers and shadow ministers can, and this might sound like just semantics or a meaningless nuance, but it's not. Ministers and shadow ministers can support the bill in principle. So what you ask them to do, if they say that back to you, you say, okay, do you support the bill in principle? And that is helpful. That is very helpful. And if they write back and say yes, they can say yes to that. I've seen many ministers, secretaries of state even say yes to that. If they say yes, forward it to us, because then we can mark them as supportive in principle, which is helpful. It's as far as they can go given their roles. And so we need them to say that. So if you do have someone on the front or shadow front bench, that's what you ask them. If you don't know what I mean by front bench and shadow front bench, again, that's where you get in touch with us and we can help you.
Steve, what's stopping the Labour Party supporting this bill? Because we've only got 51 out of 200 and something. You'd have thought that every one of them would have been supporting this proposal because of the huge impact it has at a community level.
Nothing really. They haven't said they oppose it or they don't like it. We're in discussion with the Shadow Energy Minister, Alan Whitehead, and those discussions have been constructive, and so hopefully that's going to lead to something positive publicly. But don't stop. Any of you who have Labour MPs, please keep writing to them.
You can tell them it's been noted, by the way. Lack of support from Labour on it so far.
Well, and indeed anyone who doesn't support, and don't support until they do support. So yes, but no, just keep asking them, and I think it could move in a good direction soon. But just please keep, if you've got a Labour MP, just please keep at them, and if they support, ask them to write to the leadership and say, come on. There's no reason you should be backing this.
Thanks,
right, I'll come in now, if I may.
All right, David. And then I think we have to wrap things up.
Am I allowed?
Yes.
I have a sister who's got about 12 panels on the roof and she can't use all that electricity. So she's being paid well over $1,000 by the electricity people to put it back in the grid. And you mentioned yourself, it's 15p for the likes of us to buy electricity per kilowatt hour. She only gets about under 5. I can't remember the exact figure. Isn't it that differential that needs to be removed? If we can get it very small, we've achieved what's needed, really.
Essentially, yes, David.
Well, why can't we fight for this differential to be taken away? How can they justify it?
It's 20 hours.
That's the rule that we're working to change. So this is the best way we can do it. That's why we're campaigning for this rather than anything else.
What's the excuse for it now, though?
Well, I've covered that. The government's excuses are are poor. If you go to the blog on our website, you'll see detailed deconstruction of the latest statement made by the Energy Minister in the House of Commons on this, and you'll see they have got, there's no reason. So shall we sum up, Mike?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we have one final question.
Okay, great.
$1 million question, because quite a few people have asked for us to provide a template. So is a personalized email really that much more effective than a template email?
I am so glad that this is the last question. Template emails are really not good. They are not helpful. MPs can tell when they're getting template emails. It is so important to write in your own words. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be a great essay. It can literally be a couple of lines. But if you put it in your own words, we've got a tool on our website, a Write to Your MP tool that can help you. It's very easy to use. If you go there, you can use that. Again, we can help you with more points if you want. But it is so effective when you put it in your own words. And of course, if you get others to do that and put it in their own words, imagine you're an MP. If you start getting lots of letters and emails and they're all written in their own words, that is vastly more effective than a series of template letters. Always write in your own words.
Great, thanks, Steve. We have had a lot of questions tonight. Unfortunately, we didn't even get through half of them, but if you'd like to send us a tweet or email us, use the contact form on our website. We'll try and get back to all of you as soon as possible. You want to round it up, Steve?
Yeah, okay. Yes, thanks, Mike. Well, thank you again, everyone, for your time this evening. And thank you for being a part of this. We've had just upward of 500 people this evening together, listening and commenting and asking these questions. So thank you very much. There are thousands and thousands of you across the country, and we are all working together. So please keep working together. This is a major reform that we're calling for here. It is difficult. The door is open, but it is heavy. We must keep pushing. So please, let's all keep pushing. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.